Ladies and gentlemen, it's 7:45. I'm Ken Kinnear, and on behalf of the school board and Dr. Hartzler, would like to welcome you to our meeting this evening. We took care of a few opening items in the other building before we recessed. Let the record reflect that all board members are now here and we can reconvene. I'd like to entertain a motion to reconvene the board meeting at Union Performing Arts Center, 6636 South Mingo Road, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74133.
Move for approval.
Second.
Mr. Bennett.
Here.
Ms. Romerman.
Yes.
Ms. Ford.
Yes.
Ms. McAdams.
Yes.
The chair votes yes as well. The meeting is reconvened. We're about to do an election of officers. I am extremely proud and pleased to get to serve with all of these esteemed colleagues, where any one of us can, at a moment's notice, serve as capacity as president. It's been my honor to serve for the past school year. In keeping with our tradition, it's my time to step back. And with that in mind, I'll entertain a motion for the president of the school board for the upcoming term.
Okay. I move to elect Heather McAdams as president. I'll second.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Ms. Ford.
Yes.
Ms. McAdams.
Yes.
Ms. Romerman.
Yes.
And the current chair votes yes as I pass the gavel to you.
Thank you, Ken. At this time, I will entertain a motion for the election of the vice president.
I move for Lisa Ford to serve as vice president.
I'll second the motion.
Second.
All right. Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Ms. Romerman?
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. At this time, is there a motion for the election of the board clerk?
I'd like to nominate Stacy Romerman as board clerk.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
Ms. Romerman?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. And lastly, a motion for the election of the deputy board clerk.
I move for Jeff Bennett to serve as deputy board clerk.
I'll second the motion.
All right. Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Ms. Romerman?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. We have now reinstated our new board of officers. All right. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All of the following items, those items of a routine nature, normally approved at board meetings, will be approved by one vote unless any board member desires to have a separate vote on any or all of these items. The consent agenda consists of the discussion, consideration, and action on the following items, items A through double T. Is there any discussion?
Move for approval.
I'll second.
All right. Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
Ms. Romerman?
Yes.
The chair votes yes as well. Next item is our information reports. USPA report. Do we have a USPA representative here tonight? All right. UCTA report. Ms. Churchill?
President McAdams, Dr. Hartzler, members of the board. It's good to be here and see everyone in person. We would like to congratulate Mr. Kinnear on his re-election to the board. We want to express our sincere thanks for the stipend. We are also very grateful to the district and board for your generosity in continuing to pay support staff throughout the shutdown. We held officer elections in May. Our officers for the next 2 years will be President Dina Churchill, Vice President Carrie Gunter, Treasurer Kristen Holland, Secretary Brian Berg, and Membership Chair Betty Collins. We appreciate the opportunity to be included in the Reentry Task Force. Throughout this unprecedented time, it is our privilege to be the voice for our members.
Thank you, Ms. Churchill. All right, the next item on the agenda is hearing and correspondence. Under communications, this is where we now have an opportunity for comments from the audience regarding items on the agenda. The rules for this section of the agenda are as follows. First, speakers should identify themselves. Each speaker is given a maximum of 3 minutes. The total time allocated to this item is 30 minutes. Under Board Policy 1800, the Board of Education President has the discretion to determine if topics are relevant enough to be heard and to establish the order of presentations. This includes the right to interrupt this session and move on to the next item. We have had a total of 16 people sign up to speak tonight. And of those 16, 15 of them have signed up to speak on items that are on the agenda. So those 15 people, we are going to go ahead and extend the 30-minute time period right now as needed to let those 15 people all have their 3 minutes. And then the one person who I believe is holding card number 15 will be the only one to speak at the end of the agenda, as they have comments that are not over items on the agenda. So at this time, we will begin with our speakers. Speaker number 1 is Daisy Wilson. You're welcome to come up to the microphone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daisy. I just graduated from 5th grade at Rosa Parks. I was active in Union soccer, and I was also active in POM in Union. Today, I'm here to support the changing of our mascot. I know that the mascot, Redskins, is disrespectful to the tribes in Oklahoma, who have specifically been asking us to change the name of our mascot. But it's also disrespectful to the students of Union who have to continue this ongoing conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Speaker number 2 is Desiree Edwards.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Desiree Edwards, and that was my daughter Daisy that you got to hear from. We are a proud Union family in Zone 1 and have been actively involved in the Rosa Parks family. I'm proud of Union. I'm proud of what we've accomplished with our academics, with our sports teams, and with the community that we have created. We are constantly improving and creating better spaces for our children, as evidenced by the fact that we have torn down our 43-year-old stadium and are building a beautiful new stadium that will be ready next fall. We have an opportunity right now to brand it with a mascot that our greater community can get behind. It is inappropriate for our school to continue to use the term Redskin. Regardless if any offense is intended, it is an ethnic slur. This is an opportunity to become better, and we have great leaders who have made the same decision. The Miami University of Ohio Redskins changed their name to the Redhawks. The Southern Nazarene University Redskins became the Crimson Storm. And today, Washington's NFL team has announced they are retiring the Redskins name. I would like to read the following statement from Chief Hoskin of the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee Nation will continue to urge team organizations, colleges, and high schools to reconsider depictions of Native Americans as mascots in chants and in other forms of team promotion. It is simply wrong to use Native American depictions across sports, especially Redskins, which is derogatory and offensive to Native people. I applaud those teams and schools like Union public school officials who are taking action to consider changing their team names and mascots. Dialogue on cultural appropriateness of Native Americans in this country is long overdue, and we hope more schools and team organizations take note of Union's leadership and begin their own internal discussions. Particularly when it comes to public schools, these discussions need to initially take place at the local level. and such discussions have my full support. That's the end of the quote. We have an obligation to our kids to do better. This is the perfect opportunity from a cost perspective with our new stadium, from an ethical perspective, and from a community perspective to create a mascot that better represents the diversity, strength, and character of our Union community. It's never too late to do the right thing. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. All right, speaker number 3, I believe is Jeremiah M. Jim Jr.
All right, this is be lower. All right. Really? That's cool. All right. Hello, my name is Jackson Hicks, and I will be going to the 6th and 7th grade center this coming fall. I love going to Union. I enjoy participating in the Native programs that Union provides. I like competing and representing Union in the Creek Nation Challenge Bowl. However, I do not like our school's mascot. I have been voicing my opinion since 2015. I even went as far as approaching Dr. Hartzler directly when I was in the 2nd grade. I sometimes feel ashamed that I am a Native American and go to Union because of how the mascot is portrayed. I'm not able to show my school pride for Union because all the shirts I have seen have the word Redskin or a Native American symbol. I love to sing, and I will be joining the competition choir this year. But I am worried about being forced to sing a school song that has the word Redskins in it. I would love to sing a school song that I could sing loud and proud. I'm asking that after you form this committee, you decide not to use a Native mascot and that you use a mascot we can all be proud of. Please be best and go all in. Thank you for your time.
All right, speaker number 4, Margaret Blaylock Hicks.
Good evening, Union family and friends. Union School Board, Dr. Hartzler, thank you for allowing us to have this time to speak, and thank you for bringing this important issue onto the table. My name is Margaret Hicks. I have 4 children here at Union, 2 in the 6th grade center and 2 at Ellen Ochoa. We are truly an intertribal family. We have 11 tribes running through our family's blood. We are Shawnee, Osage, Ojibwe, Peoria, Creek, Crow, Onondaga, Seminole, Pawnee, Oto, and Ponca tribes. We are active in our Union community as well as our Native communities. In fact, if you look on your Union Redskins website, you see our kids, my little family, shown. We love Union, and I am a proud Union parent. I'm just not a Redskin parent. Like many families, we joined the Union United for Change, not to tear down our school, but to build something better, something we can all be proud of. Union District continues to strive to be the leader in developing students to be college and career ready. Understanding this must involve social and emotional learning. So last year, you guys created the Hope, Guidance, and Social Emotional Learning Department. Part of social emotional learning is self-awareness and social awareness. I can recall being at a meeting where a Union staff member kept saying, "It's hard to be a Redskin. It's hard to be a Redskin." I kept thinking, does he know the emotions that many families, including mine, attach to that word? As an adult, I was able to reconcile those feelings. Now I ask you to imagine how a student feels with that same emotional connotation to our mascot. To quote Union's Director of Hope, Scott Pennington, "I truly believe what our students need most from us is us. We need to be willing to model for them what it means to be compassionate, empathetic, encouraging, caring, humbling, hardworking, vulnerable, passionate, trustworthy, etc. We need to see our students not just as students, but as human beings with a story that's so often unlike our own. I ask you to vote yes and go all in to form a diverse committee to eliminate our Native American mascot and to show everyone that Union is unity. And we will always hold high the values of honesty, integrity, transparency, do what's right and above. Thank you again for your time. My way.
Thank you. All right, speaker number 5 is Shada Zakarian.
Good evening. My name is Shada Zakarian. I am a Union lifer, graduate from the class of 2011, future Union parent, and voter in District 4. First, I would like to thank you, Dr. Hartzler, and the board for taking up the reconsideration of this mascot. It takes courage and leadership to bring issues of our wounded histories forward, but in doing so, an incredible opportunity for healing emerges. As a Union lifer, pride for my alma mater runs deep. So many of my successes can only be credited to this incredible institution and the many staff, faculty, and school leaders who invested in my development. They're here tonight. I still remember learning about the 6 pillars of character as a young child: respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, citizenship, and trustworthiness. It was at Union that I learned what it means to respect someone else. It was at Union where I learned what it means to be a leader and to help others. It was at Union where I learned the many values that have led me to be a strong advocate for change. Now I have my own son, who I hope to see graduate from Union someday, and as I prepare to teach him and instill these values in his life, I am really thankful. He will attend a school that represents excellence in so many ways, but I can't help but to dread the day I have to explain to him what this means, what this mascot means. I keep asking myself, how can I teach him about respect when sanctioned disrespect is on display at school? Union represents so many amazing values, and this name isn't needed to uphold that message. It's time to choose a symbol that matches the standards of this great institution. My sister and I wanted to demonstrate just how much public support there is for the school district and for this change, so in 1 week, we organized a coalition of students, parents, staff, faculty, alumni, and Native leadership representing over 1,000 people who want this change to happen now. On behalf of the group United for Change, we ask that you vote yes tonight, and we ask that the committee you form finds a permanent solution for this mascot change and eliminates all uses of Native imagery and emblems across the district, including teepees. We ask that this committee represents a broad and diverse group of members with suggestions we've provided you. We ask that this committee provides a clear and direct timeline that leads to productive dialogue and actionable results. Finally, we ask that this committee commits to creating a physically and emotionally safe environment for all students to thrive by outlining additional measures and curriculum changes the district can take toward building a diverse, inclusive, and equitable learning environment for all. I love Union. Thank you so much for hearing. Thank you for taking the time, and I'm excited for a yes vote tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker, number 6, is Angela Hamilton.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Angela Hamilton, but some of your Jefferson students know me as Nurse Hamilton. I served as their healthcare provider for 6 wonderful years. I loved working in the best district in town and serving some of the best students in the district. I'm also a proud Native American Apache parent who has had 3 students graduate from Union. I will always be Union for life, but I will never be a Redskin. My children, who were very active in sports, had to watch the misrepresentation of who we are as we portrayed on the football fields and on the sidelines with the mimicking of our Native American people with the teepees and war paint and headdresses, my cheerleaders having to pretend to shout "Go Redskins" in chants so that they wouldn't get in trouble by their coaches, and my son having to wear uniforms with that name, even though we find the word very derogatory in our culture. Let's take a minute to review Union's core values that represent the Union way. Commitment to excellence. Pursue the highest measure of quality in all that we do. Well, Union is the leader in excellence, and we want you to lead the way to change now. Collegiality. Demonstrate respect and ability to work as a team members. Respect our culture and work within the community to find a solution for this name change. Honesty, integrity, and transparency. Do what's right and above the board. Take the time right now to do what's right. The time for change is now. Innovation. Embrace new, effective ways, thinking, and programs. I know that change is hard, but I know that we can think of a solution and learn to embrace it. Inclusiveness. Cultivate an organizational culture of accepting children, families, and employees for who they are rather than categorizing them by income, ethnicity, or ability. See us for who we are and respect us, and don't misrepresent our culture. Empowerment. Help people reach their full potential. Help the Native American students and staff be culturally accepted and empowered. Accountability. Accept responsibility for achieving these results. And acknowledge the Redskin name and mascot are unacceptable derogatory terms and take the responsibility to make it right. Thoughtful planning. Use data and district values in planning and decision making. Listen to the individuals and the leaders in our community and make the right decision as the other teams have done. Together we can. That's our motto at Union. Let's make this change and vote yes.
Thank you. Speaker number 7? Gerald.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
My name is Gerald Billy. I'm a proud citizen of the Choctaw Nation. My wife is a proud member of the Muskogee Nation. Our son Tushka goes to Bovers Bovers Elementary. As a first grader, Tushka came to us with a concern. He was in a class and a teacher had started the chant, the Redskins chant, and we had spoken to him about this, about the term Redskin, prior to him attending school. Unfortunately, he came back to us and we had to explain to him, we had to go to him and let him know it was a very difficult discussion to have with him. The mascot represents a racist term. It's unfortunate that Union Public Schools could not be a leader in this effort to change this mascot, but we have an opportunity now. We have an opportunity to change a name, a term that's derogatory towards Native Americans. We hope that you will seize this opportunity and make it necessary to change and end this use of this racist mascot. I'm a product of the Oklahoma public school system. My wife is a product of the Oklahoma public school system. And during our time, we have met many Native Americans that are also products. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they are teachers, they're engineers. But one thing that we are not is we're not a Redskin. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Speaker number 8 is Chad Best.
My name is Chad Best. I'm current chairperson of the Indian Education Parent Committees. I've served on the IEC for about 11 years. I'm Cherokee and have had 3 children attend Union. Currently, my son Braden is an incoming freshman. I want to say that in my years working with Union administration and Dr. Hartzler specifically, that Union has been extremely supportive of our Native students. As I went to national conferences, I learned that the support we have here is rare. It's different from the adversarial relationships that many JOM programs have with their schools. I'm certain that the intention at Union is to have honor and celebrating our Native heritage. I'm hopeful that we can work with local tribes not to take a step backwards and stop celebrating our wonderful Native culture. I hope when this process is finished, we will still have honor for our Native students and their culture as strongly as before. It is clear, however, that the mascot, the TP, the word Redskins needs to go. There's a long history of the word redskin being tied to the institutionalized genocide of Native Americans. Redskins is not just a twisted compliment like savages, braves, or red men. It represents a trophy of war, an ancestor slaughtered for money in an attempt to erase a people who today are students walking our hallways, looking at this trophy reference plastered everywhere. I don't know how you look at this from this perspective and think it's okay. There are many people, and even some Native Americans, who will tell you they're not offended by the Redskins term, but what about those who are? The most important piece of this is by far the student experience. We know there are many Native students who are deeply offended by this. Imagine you're a student excited to get your yearbook, but this term and imagery is all over it. Imagine being my daughter, and after workout, you go to a tryout with legit probably 100 girls there, and you make the basketball team, and you get gear with Lady Redskins all over it. My daughter wanted to be an engineer, and there are not a lot of female Native engineers. She met Kara Cowan Watts, who was holding a scholarship workshop. Miss Cowan Watts was a Cherokee tribal council member who also is highly intelligent and accomplished engineer. She was a role model for my daughter as an example of what she had hoped to become. Ashland approached her after the workshop and was let into about the mascot and how Ashland needed to be doing all these things to change it. She kind of came at Ashland for wearing the warm-up after school at a Union scholarship workshop. Needless to say, it was not the experience she had hoped that it would be, and we're setting up our children for situations such as these. While intentions are good, this racist term has been normalized, and it needs to be seen from the perspective of those who are offended by it. Our society has become so divisive. Our schools should be a place that's inclusive. This is not the place for us versus them. There's plenty of this elsewhere. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Speaker number 9 is Braden Best.
Hi, my name is Braden Best. This is a perspective of a Union Public School student who is Native and has hopes for change. I've always seen Redskins as a normalized term that represents our school, and band, one of our chants is called Cherokee. And after we play the pep tune, we're all supposed to act like crazy and scream and go crazy. This is the image we've put on students like me. I've cheered and chanted that word, and I was unaware of the racial slur it was. And I've had taken pride in the fact that I am a Union Redskin, but that's not something I want to be proud of. If you have ever called an educated Native American that word, they would obviously freak out and that would offend them. So why would I want that to be a word I'm proud of? This is a word that I don't want anyone to be proud of, and that's why I, in the point of view of a student, request change for the Union mascot.
Thank you. Speaker number 10, Eddie Petherick.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eddie Petherick. I've been a resident and property owner in the Union School District for over 30 years. All three of my children completed grades K through 12 at Union. I am both Muskogee Creek and Cherokee. I am asking you to approve the formation of a committee to reevaluate the use of the Redskin mascot. From a personal perspective, I suspect many of you think the definition of a mascot named Redskin with a capital R is somehow different than the definition of a Redskin with a lowercase r. It's rather stunning that in the year 2020, we are still debating this. When someone refers to me or another Native American, either directly or indirectly as a Redskin, I feel both offended and threatened. To a greater degree, it is also hurtful, especially when I know it inflicts emotional pain onto others, including members of my family. I'm aware of the commitment and respect which Union has shown to the Native American community. However, that does not offset the usage of an offensive mascot. Initially, I was annoyed by the mention or display of Redskin at all school-related functions. After all these years, the annoyance has escalated exponentially. Let me assure you, there is a significant portion of the Native American population who want to see the mascot go away. While others in the community may oppose changing the mascot, my question to each of you on the board is this. Do any of you personally feel justified to call a Native American a redskin? When you are meeting with the Muskogee Creek Nation or the Cherokee Nation leadership to discuss this issue, will you refer to them as redskin? I would like each of you to think about this question, and if you do not feel the term is offensive, please refrain from using it anyway. From a business perspective, it makes no sense to keep the mascot name. The time and money wasted on a battle to save a mascot name is not reasonable nor economical. Eventually, or if it has not happened already, sponsorships and business partnerships will be affected by the negative press and social media reputation. Fewer companies or institutions will want to associate with Union Public Schools. From an educational perspective, how will maintaining a perceived racist mascot benefit the students? Does this teach students that it's acceptable to call any Native American a redskin? How many positive education success stories will be overlooked due to the offensive mascot name? The negative image from the press and social media that the Union School District receives gets reflected back onto the students. As other school districts change their mascots, the redskin scrutiny will only become more visible. Please consider these factors when determining whether the current mascot is sustainable. I suspect you will determine that the redskin mascot is no longer tenable. In addition, please consult with tribal leadership along with the wide spectrum of the Native American community. This issue will continue to escalate until the mascot is changed. I appreciate you all listening, and I thank you for taking the time to serve the community.
Thank you. All right, speaker number 11 is Caden Ketcher.
Hello, my name is Caden Ketcher. I'm a senior here, and I'm concerned the way the school board is handling the coronavirus pandemic. Social distancing and other measures to prevent disease will not work in school buildings, and the board should instead invest in providing online solutions where students can do schooling from home, similar to the way school was conducted after spring break. This may not be ideal, but I do not feel comfortable going to school while a pandemic that has killed 500,000 people across the world spreads faster daily and daily. Lives are at stake, and I urge the board to change their position on the issue of reopening schools. On the concern of the Redskin mascot controversy, removal of the name Redskin and other Native American imagery should be, and such as the teepee crew, should be immediate. The name was created by invading Europeans in the 18th century to demoralize, discriminate, and dehumanize Native Americans. I implore the school board to remove the name Redskins from the school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Speaker number 12 is Lee Roy.
Hello, it's great to see so many friends up here. I know most of you guys personally, and I just want to thank you for all the work that you do, because I know you don't do it for the salary, except maybe one of you guys, but that's okay. And it's great to see so many friends out here. It's really great to see what a big crowd showed up today. So this is a really important thing that we're talking about today, and I wrote a big speech about it, and I have big words, and everything's. But so many wonderful speakers have already gone before me, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell you a story, and then maybe you'll understand where we're coming from. But I thought we had 30 minutes and not 3, so maybe if we could just adjust that for me. No, okay, I'll be quick.
Not you.
I'll be quick. I think you shake your head every time I come up.
You have 2 left.
So I am Lee Roy. I'm 116th Cherokee. I originally come from the town of Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which hails as the Cherokee capital of the world. I loved growing up in Tahlequah. I loved all the native cultural opportunities that we had just growing up. The one thing I didn't love is I didn't have a great Native American name, so I didn't quite feel Native American enough. I mean, Tony Bearclaw mowed our lawn, and Marissa Deerenwater lived next door to me, and my best friend was Julia Bushyhead, and my last name was Hathaway. Very, very English, not very fun at all. So when we moved to Union about 10 years ago, I was super excited because finally I got to embrace Native American heritage and culture, and I stand before you someone who was once, I believed myself to be a very proud Redskin. And it's because I didn't know any better. I was super excited because I wanted to show, yes, I want to pay homage to our Native American culture and heritage, and this is very, very important. My friends, Julia Bushyhead, Tony Bearclaw, and Marissa Deerenwater, when they would see photos that I would post on Facebook where my children are wearing pictures of the mascot of Union Redskins, and they would see the words Union Redskins, and then they would come to me and they would say, Lee, why would you do this to us? It's literally like you're slapping us in the face. I said, no, you don't understand, because in Union, the culture is different, and our children grow up and they aspire to be Redskins because we know it's something brave and wonderful. And that's what we've taught our kids. And what they told me is, but think about this, there'll be a day when your children graduate and they go out into the real world. And when that happens, they need to know that they have been idolizing a racial slur. And that really spoke to me. And so I think it's important to note that I was once a proud Union Redskin because I didn't know any better. But we're now in a time and a culture of change, and we know better now, so we can do better. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Number 13 is Thomas Taylor.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Taylor. I'm half Creek with the Muskogee Creek Nation, and I just want to thank you for all the district staff here to participate and help us to resolve our differences. Dr. Hartzler's cool. I'll go to JOM with him. Okay, we are a community that operates as one unit in a particular organization. One word to the district is move forward with this, what is right in the victim's eyes. And that victim would be anyone who is offended by any organization's advertisement and local's mascot. This would allow any and everyone to participate in sports, academics, etc., and protect our future. My own son is confused. That says a lot considering we love our children, and I speak for everyone since I'm able to speak for people who care. I have two children, one in 11th and one in 10th. They're intelligent young men and understand, but have no voice until now. The oldest is an artist. He's in a band. My youngest is an athlete. He plays football. So they see what is created by something that is bigger than they are. Perhaps, I hate to say it, idolatry. Let's focus on what is happening to our children, not just of color, but everyone with a heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 14 is Michael Hamilton.
Hi, my name is Michael Hamilton, and I really didn't come here to speak tonight, but when I showed up at the Board of Education place to watch the speech, I saw all the speakers that were there and assumed pretty much how it's went this whole way. Everybody wants to get rid of the name, and I'm obviously opposed to that. Union's always been about pride, and I've been taught you stand for something, you fall for everything. And there might be somebody that has a group on Facebook that has 1,000 followers. You know, there's tens of thousands of people that went to Union that love to have that pride in Union Redskins. Everybody looks at that as a racist term. We look at it as a pride. It's prideful. Redskins they were tough. They were warriors, just like Jinx Trojans. Every time I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, what school did you go to?" I went to Union Redskins. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Everybody hates us because we're the best. We've been the best. But everybody's going to be offended. Yeah, you might offend thousands of people here, 2,000 people here. You're going to offend 10,000 people that gone to Union. This and that. If I stand up, I'm not going to be the only voice here. Probably there's going to be nobody else here that speaks up for it. I'll speak up for it. And I hope y'all make the great decision to vote no on it, to change the name. It's been, 20 years ago, went through the same thing. And I watched my dad sit there and argue for the same thing, and I'll do the same. Union's very like I said, not a great speaker, but I hope y'all make the right decision. You know, I heard you earlier take the Constitution. You know, the thing about the Constitution, number one is freedom of speech. You can put that up there all you want. You're going to offend so many. It doesn't matter what you change the name to. It's going to offend somebody. You keep the name. You stand up for something. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So speaker number 15 will actually be at the end of the meeting. And so speaker 16 is Ashley Del Castillo.
Hi, my name is Ashley Del Castillo, and I would like to share my ideas for the benefits of our district. Divide the students into classes of morning and evenings like shifts. Sit students 6 feet apart. Penalize parents if they are knowingly sent their child sick. Sense students' temperature and provide hand sanitizer. Keep windows open and keep students at one classroom a day and have the teachers come to the classroom. Have lunch outside for 6th and 7th grade center and increase the staff to monitor and stay 6 feet apart during the lunch. Hire a crew to disinfect every cubicle after school shift. Thank you for your time, and I hope you all take in my consideration of my ideas.
Thank you, and thank you to everybody who came out to speak tonight. At this point, we're going to move on with our agenda. The next item on the agenda is the business agenda under instruction. Consider and take action on a recommendation to form a non-standing board committee under Board Policy 1150 for the single purpose of reevaluating the district's continued use of the Redskin logo and mascot, with the member composition and other matters related to the committee to be addressed at the August 2020 regular board meeting. Dr. Hartzler.
Thank you, President McAdams, board members. Let me just say I have a few comments to make before I would ask you to consider this recommendation, and that is that I'd like to remind us all that within every democracy, I think that each generation must be somewhat renegotiated and reinvented through dialogue. This is vital to our existence as a civilization, and it is through this dialogue that we come to better understand one another and learn to live together, despite even our deepest of convictions. Over the last year, I have received a number of concerns regarding the continued use of the Redskin mascot. Of particular concern to me is that I am now hearing more from those within the union community. In the past, these concerns have primarily come from outside the union district. When the Board of Education made the decision to retain the mascot in 2003, it was after much collaboration from union stakeholders and several of our own Native American parents and students. Now, with the concerns primarily coming from within union, patrons, staff members, students, alumni, along with the recent events across the country concerning the use of Native American related logos and mascots, I believe it is time to reevaluate the district's continued use of the Redskins logo and mascot. In order to give voice to a broad range of viewpoints, it is my recommendation that the Board of Education approve, generally, the appointment of a non-standing committee for this purpose pursuant to Board Policy 1150. The exact composition of the members of this committee, as well as the committee's clear instructions, scope, and time limits, will be presented to the board for approval at the regular August board meeting. At this time, my thought is that the committee would be comprised of 35 members, consisting of the following: 4 patrons appointed by the PTA Council of Union, 2 school administrators appointed by the superintendent, 2 Board of Education members appointed by the board who would serve as a resource or guidance. They would be non-voting. 4 teachers, 2 elementary and 2 secondary, appointed by the Union Classroom Teachers Association. 2 support personnel appointed by USPA. 2 staff members, 1 from fine arts and 1 from athletics, appointed by the superintendent. And 2 parents from the Union's Indian Education Committee, appointed by the board members of this committee. 2 high school students from Union's Indian Education Committee, appointed by the board members of this committee. 5 patrons, 1 from each board zone, appointed by the Board of Education. 4 current class presidents, 1 freshman, 1 sophomore, 1 junior, and 1 senior. 4 alumni, appointed by the Union Schools Education Foundation Board. 1 tribal member from the Creek Nation, appointed by the principal chief, who would serve as a resource and would be non-voting. And 1 tribal member from the Cherokee Nation, appointed by the principal chief, who would be a resource and also non-voting. The president of the Board of Education will select the chairperson from one of the above-named committee members once the committee, if approved, has been formed. Further, I intend to recommend that the committee meet, at a minimum, at least once monthly, provide monthly status reports to the board, and make its final report and recommendations to the board no later than the regular December board meeting, unless the committee reports that it believes additional time is needed. With that said, I would respectfully like to ask the board again to consider and take my recommendation of establishing or forming a non-standing board committee under Board Policy 1150 for the single purpose of reviewing the district's continued use of the Redskins logo and mascot.
Before the motion is put forth, if I could make a few comments, and for all of you out there, school board laws, this is the only way we get to discuss this. We don't get to convene secretly or separately. We only get to discuss this in an open meeting. So I'll signal to my colleagues in this format that I plan to vote for the reevaluation when the motion is made. But I'd like to give you some of my thought process on this as we think through this. This isn't something that just came about all of a sudden. It's something Dr. Hartzler and I have been talking about for quite some time with meetings with various folks going back to October. And I think we probably had this on a natural timeline for some time this fall. It obviously gets accelerated with the national attention that our friends in Washington are getting. And so while it looks like a coincidence, or it looks like that we're rushing to something because something on a national scale has happened, in reality it was on a natural timeline. It has been accelerated. To all of you that see the mascot that we have as an issue of race and racism, I'm sympathetic to that. I understand your experiences. You would have seen it through that lens. For those that see it as derogatory and offensive, I can just say it was never intended to be that way. A school mascot is selected as a badge of honor, heritage, or strength, and there's little doubt in my mind in 1945 when this was adopted, that the board at that time had that in mind. I just can't imagine any school selecting a mascot and saying, hey, let's pick something that we see as racist. Hey, let's see something that can be derogatory and offensive. So nevertheless, the issue for me is about stereotyping. It's stereotyping a class of people by use of mascots, logos, and emblems. I very much respect the fact that if I'm wearing such a logo or mascot or emblem, and I'm hearing the other team yelling at me, kill the Indians, kill the Redskins, kill the Warriors, whatever it might be, then it becomes personal. And so from my vantage point, it just seems that we've got bigger things that we need to be addressing as opposed to controversy over a mascot. I was pleased to hear the gentleman talk about all that Union has done to go to great lengths to provide Native American education, to connect our Native American families with tribal enrollment and benefits. And I don't think it was spoken here tonight, but as we all know, our schools sit on reservation land that was recently affirmed by the Supreme Court. So I want to be clear, all those facts run counter to anything that this board or our predecessors would view as racism, derogatory, and offensive. I believe we've gone to great lengths to counter that. But I do want stereotyping explored, and I want it explored on three fronts, really: mascots, logos, and emblems. So we are seeking constructive dialogue, and I cannot thank you all enough tonight with the way in which you delivered your comments. I was not a board member, but I remember sitting through the discussions 17 years ago, and it would have been nice to have had this type of dialogue at that time. So we're seeking constructive dialogue that results in constructive solutions. My personal vantage point, I would like to know, is it just our mascot that is offensive? Or do mascots such as Warriors, Indians, Cowboys, Savages, Chiefs, do they fall in the same category? I don't know, but I would like for that. I would like for the committee to explore that. And so what will the committee's findings be with respect to emblems such as arrows, arrowheads, bows, feathers, headdress, teepees, etc.? Because that crosses a whole lot more than what we're dealing with, even though our issue is the only one that we need to address. So those are my thoughts. I wanted to give the background information on that. Again, this is the only way we get to talk.
I would also like to clarify, because I've had members of the community ask me, we are not at this time voting for a new mascot. This committee will not choose a new mascot if it's to change. This is just to evaluate the one we have. If this mascot is retired, then that'll be a completely different committee that will choose a different mascot as well. Anybody else? Are we ready for a motion?
Is there any more?
Well, I might clarify a little bit, Ms. Romerman, that certainly, as I stated, my recommendation is that this is kind of a single-purpose committee. But I'm not sure, depending on the outcome of this, we'll then reevaluate whether the committee perhaps might want to extend on, if the decision is made to retire. So I just wanted to kind of correct that to say that this is one single purpose, and I want to keep the main thing with my recommendation. And again, the focus needs to be on reevaluating the continued use of our mascot and logo.
All right, are there any other comments? All right, I will entertain a motion.
I move for approval.
I move that the board approve pursuant to policy 1150, the formation of a non-standing committee for the purpose of reevaluating the district's continued use of the Redskins logo and mascot, with the board to approve at its regular August board meeting the members comprising the committee, together with committee's clear instructions, scope, and time limits.
Second. All right, Ms. Romerman?
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. Motion passes. All right, so the next item on our business agenda is to consider and take action on recommendations made by the District Reentry Task Force in regards to the return to school guidelines. Mr. Bushyhead and Ms. Calvin.
Yes, President McAdams, Dr. Hartzler, board members, tonight I'm going to present to you the most recent version of the District Return to School Plan. The District Reentry Task Force began meeting a few months ago and currently has 29 members. Committee members include 2 board members, administrators, teachers, support personnel, and parents. The Return to School Plan document is in no way intended to be a final or a complete version. We still have dozens of questions, protocols, and concerns that still need to be vetted by the committee. The circumstances around the pandemic are ever-changing, which reinforces our need to stay flexible as we plan. We understand that any strategies put in place can only mitigate the spread of the virus, and we cannot eliminate the spread of the virus. The committee's 2 primary goals for this board meeting were, 1, to clearly define the learning options that our students are going to be afforded and to communicate those options to our parents and staff. And number 2 was to communicate with our parents and staff the precautions that will be taken if in-person learning was the choice made. Before I turn it over to Ms. Calvin to explain the learning pathways, I want to outline a few recommendations coming from the committee in regard to in-person learning. When changes are made to the document that I'm presenting to you, those changes will be updated and continue to be made available to the public. Here are a few items related to our plan for in-person learning. Item number 1, all students who choose in-person learning will go to school 5 days per week on the regular schedule as approved by this board last spring. I will be proposing on the next board agenda item a slight modification to the school calendar. Our plan is to start in-person learning on Monday, August 17th rather than Thursday, August 13th. We will be able to recapture the lost time by eliminating our late start Friday times that we currently have. Item number 2 is students, staffs, and visitors will be required to wear a face covering at all times while in a school building. One exception will be during mealtime when students are eating. We are currently working on several options to minimize cohort mixing during lunch, trying to create recommended social distancing practices, and purchasing physical barriers to allow for a safer environment. In addition, the recommendation is for all high school students, including 10th graders, to continue to have the option of an open campus during lunchtime. Item number 3, bus transportation will continue to be provided to our students. Students and staff will be required to wear a face covering while boarding, riding, or exiting a bus. In the event we are unable to provide service to all of our students due to an anticipated shortage of drivers, our bus service may be canceled for some grade levels, beginning with our high school students and moving down through grades. Item number 4, all visitors, including parents, will not be allowed to enter the building or go past the receptionist vestibule without an exception made by the principal. This will have an impact on how first day school procedures will be conducted at the elementary sites, so other plans are being developed to help students acclimate to the new surroundings. Number 5, the district will continue to offer our extended day program and limited after-school programming with the same safety guidelines in place. Another item is the reality that physical distancing will be a goal, but it is an unreasonable expectation based upon our proposed schedule. For us to have all students at school every day during regular school time, social distancing is not an achievable practice. We will attempt to social distance when possible. We will continue to try to minimize cohort mixing and find ways to reduce the risk for our students and our staff. Other items that we have talked about and will continue to discuss are items such as athletics, fine arts, and extracurricular. We'll continue with planned activities with extra measures taken if we are able and as we do plan to return to school on August 17th. All of these items will be under constant review with possible future limitations on what number of events we have, the number of people allowed to attend an event, and other safety measures that may be required. I want to thank the committee members who have invested so many hours in meetings, in research, and in thought. We have tried to adhere to the ever-changing guidelines provided by professionals such as the CDC and the American Association of Pediatrics. We are also following city, state, and federal guidelines when their guidance is provided. These are very difficult times, and many of the questions do not have a right answer, but the committee will continue to adjust our plan as needed. So I want to give the mic to Ms. Calvin to discuss the 2 learning options that we're going to provide for our students. Then we'll take questions.
Good evening, Mrs. McAdams, Dr. Hartzler, and other members of the board. I am going to present to you the learning options that we would like to provide to our parents outlined in the reentry plan. In June, we surveyed our parents to give us a good idea, a beginning idea of what it is that they wanted at that time, knowing that that could be a fluid decision too. So when we surveyed our parents, we knew that almost 70% of our parents wanted the students to be in class, with 30% of our parents wanting a virtual option. At that time, we knew that a virtual plan was necessary. So what we have 2 options outlined in our plan. We have an in-person plan and a virtual plan. And I'm going to give you just a brief explanation of both of those plans. The in-person learning will be teachers will provide face-to-face instruction. Students will attend class in person 5 days a week. The schools will be open during regular instructional hours. In the event that school is canceled for any period of time, students will be provided instruction through our distance learning plan. The distance learning plan is a very ramped up version of what we experienced in March. This plan incorporates new learning and incorporates grading and a more structured outline for our students. Now I would like to explain the virtual option. The virtual option for elementary students pre-K through 5. This will be learning at home. A union teacher will deliver all instruction remotely and provide support utilizing the Seesaw educational software. A union teacher will use union curricula and our Oklahoma academic standards while maintaining the continuity of learning. Virtual learning is a minimum of a 1-semester commitment. Once a student begins virtual learning, he or she will remain in the virtual learning for 1 semester. The students will also receive an appropriate device, be it an iPad or laptop, depending on what grade level that they're in. For our secondary students in grades 6 through 12, the learning will be at home. This is virtual. Just a reminder, I'm discussing the virtual. The learning is at home. Students will receive instruction and coursework through one of our contractual virtual programming and curriculum offerings, supported by union teachers. This program will ensure a student has the credits they need for graduation. However, some of the class choices will be limited. In-person participation in extracurricular activities such as fine arts and athletics may be available by request. Transportation will not be provided for the extracurricular activities. Virtual learning is also a minimum of a one-semester commitment. Once a student begins virtual learning, he or she will remain in virtual learning for the entire semester. The virtual program does not meet NCAA clearinghouse requirements. The students will also check out a laptop that are in the virtual learning plan. With approval of this plan, we would like to send out the information, the question to the parents tomorrow in a survey format of their choice of in-person or virtual. We will also be sending out the survey to the teachers since we now know that we do need to offer the virtual option. We will be sending out a survey to teachers asking them their preference. That will be coming from Human Resources. The deadline for the surveys, we are looking at July 22nd. This is the minimum amount of time that will allow us to match parent request and teacher request and get school started and up and running by the 17th of August. In 5 short weeks. So that is our in-person and virtual option in a nutshell. There is a lot more that went into the making and the planning of this, but that is the plan in a nutshell. Mr. Bushyhead and I can entertain questions.
I know there are several, so who would like to start?
There's so many. I thank my respect to the committee. I know some members up here served on it. I did not, so I may have more questions than other people, more questions than you guys do. But, and thank you so much. I know this is mind-numbingly hard. I know this is like the hardest decision I've ever had to make, both for my own children that go to Union and the other 16,000 children that go to Union. So I thank you all so much for your hard work. I don't know where to start. I'll start with the July 22nd survey. So that's when the survey is due. That's not when parents have to make this drop-dead decision about virtual or in-person.
We are asking parents to make the decision by July 22nd so that we have enough time to plan. We will have to allocate enough staff for virtual and make sure that we have a balance in our in-person.
But responding back to the survey does not enroll them in the virtual program. They will still then have to enroll.
They will enroll in the virtual program. So when they get the survey, hopefully with approval tomorrow, that when they get the survey, the automatic default is in person. If they choose virtual, there is a link that they will click, and that link will direct them exactly to the form that they will complete.
Okay. That's my all right.
Okay, so I had someone text me. They want to know if the Seesaw curriculum, would they be able to do pre-AP classes with that curriculum if they chose virtual?
Seesaw is just for elementary, and it's not a platform. Seesaw will be the way, it is software, and so that is where we will deliver. It's not a curriculum. It is how we will deliver. Should we go to distance, if a parent chooses in person, Seesaw will be utilized in our distance learning plan.
So I guess then Seesaw is an elementary Canvas.
Okay, I guess then what they're asking, if their child, if they pick virtual, is pre-AP classes, can they get pre-AP classes through virtual, is their question. I don't know, is that?
Pre-AP would be considered an advanced class. There will be some AP classes that they will not be able to take through virtual.
Okay.
but 6th through 9th pre-AP will be available to virtual students.
I am going to have to, I'm almost certain that it is, and I'm going to look at Bart.
There are honor courses that are available through the Adjournment program. They are not called pre-AP. They do not own that honor.
So they will be advanced classes, just not specifically branded pre-AP.
Correct.
And will parents, before they make this choice, have those class lists before them so they can choose which path to take?
We can certainly include that information. We do know, we have in our letter that should parents have questions or want more clarification on the virtual option or what we are doing as far as in person, that we need for them to contact the principal, because some of them are student specific.
Okay.
Some of them aren't just real clear one way or the other.
Does this NCAA, does that just affect the high school?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be a student athlete that thinks they want to play or perform in an activity or sport in college.
Yeah, talk some more about that. What do we need to do to get NCAA clearinghouse approval? Because that was one of the selling points for me on the virtual program, is that our athletes would be able to choose virtual without, and it be just like a normal course type of learning experience. Is there an approval process that we've got to go to the NCAA for, or is it just so new we don't know?
Well, and I know Mr. Tempest could speak to this a little more than I can, but there is an extensive approval process for every class that we are offering through NCAA accreditation. Our past experience would indicate that we have no way to get NCAA accreditation with the classes that we are offering if they're not already approved. So, yes, right now the offerings that we have are not NCAA approved.
It said, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
So the classes we have offering right now, the majority of them are not NCAA approved. And we would not be able to get them approved prior to completion.
So it doesn't meet that accreditation
That's
standard.
right. You have to get approval by course.
Okay.
Okay, so here's another tangential question. The part about parents being allowed in the building, I am a band mom, and the band cannot function without its crew of parents. I presume the football team can't eat and so forth without their parents' crew and various other groups. So are, parents just completely barred from the building for those kind of scaffolding that we do for all those extracurricular activities?
No, the committee actually discussed groups such as PTA, and with the understanding that if they are doing work in the building, that they would quite likely receive an exception. But because they are working in the building, will not give them access to students or staff in the building while they're there. So, for example, the band parents who work on the uniforms area would be allowed to go to that area, but they will not be interacting with students at that point. There may be some exceptions, like when we're checking things out, but we've talked about screenings for that. And understand that as we look at this, the goal is to try to plan for in-person learning, to try to come back to school, yet still maintain the responsibility of trying to keep the kids and the staff as safe as possible. So there will be times that some of these groups will be able to come up. For example, a PTA person may be allowed, because they do some work in the school, they would be allowed to go up and do that work in the office area under the same guidelines, but they would not be given opportunity or access to students within the building.
So what would the procedure be for that?
For what?
Is it going to be a site principal that gives you like a stamp that you're approved to work in the uniform room? How's that going to?
We would check you in through, because everybody's going to be started at the front entry. And again, the band area, you have to access that through the building right now. We're actually in the new band building we're designing has a separate entrance with that in mind. But like the PTA folks, they would just check into the front office and be given permission to go back. They will still have the same requirements as the staff, the mask, and again, our main goal with that is to try to make sure that we aren't exposing our students and staff to any more than what we need to run school. And we realize that our PTA and our band boosters and some of our other boosters are critical for us to be able to continue to have school and have some of the groups perform and participate that we want to. I mean, we can't survive with some of that help. But again, there's some benefits have been that if I was one of these volunteers, that it gave me a little more access to the school. That will not be the intent of allowing them to come into the building.
So I think maybe for a little bit of clarification, I'm on the committee, and we were speaking of things like when we're saying no parents, that's like more of the parents who are coming up and eating lunch maybe in the building with their kids, or coming up for reasons other than to help at the school, but to be up there just to be with their children, which in the past we'd like to allow, but in this current situation we need to limit who's in the building. And a lot of things like the band parents and the football booster, those are happening after school hours more so than during the school day. And so what we're looking for when we were talking about this policy, we're talking about more who we're limiting during the hours that school's in session. So while we have kids actively in the building, that we're not allowing parents to be in the building for a reason that hasn't been approved by an administrator. And we're not allowing also things like in the past when we've had maybe like a convention or somebody come in and use our great hall during the school day, that things like that aren't going to happen this year, in order to minimize the number of people that are in our buildings while all of our students and staff are here.
But booster club meetings, parent-teacher organizations, after school would still presumably be able to occur as in the past?
Yes, right now we're looking through our facilities request. I give you a great example. We have a professional development activity going on during the school day in the UCA Grand Hall, and we're canceling that because it is during a time when our students are present. And so we're not just considering from the start bell to the end bell, but also when we have students on campus. So events that we're having after school when we may have kids practicing, for example, they're at the UMAC before or after school, we are canceling those events for outside visitors. And we will continue to look at opportunities to rent our facilities after hours. A good example is we have some of our UFA board members doing some interviewing for coaches, and so we provide them some access to one of our buildings, but that's would be after hours if that was during the school year.
Right.
So that's really the time we're shutting it down, is when we feel like kids are in the facility.
Good. So, and I'm sorry, but booster club meetings still continue?
We would still continue to have those, yes.
Okay.
I think it might be helpful if Emily and Mr. McCready perhaps sent out some information to the various groups so that they have a good understanding of how this is going to work and expectations.
Yeah.
There was some confusion, I think, by some of the band parents too, about whether or not virtual is an option with some of their components requiring an in-class component. So how does that work? Will band students be able to choose virtual, or are they precluded by nature of in-class component?
That activity hour actually counts as their in-class requirement. So they can't, let's say they're in band, they can't leave before first hour starts and count that as an hour. Does that make sense? For NCAA reasons, right? I said that wrong.
No, I think.
I said that wrong.
I think what you're asking is, can you choose virtual and still choose to have an hour that you're band or that you're football?
Yes.
Even though your other 5 hours are virtual?
That,
And the answer
that's
is
what
yes.
we're discussing right now, is how that works out.
Yeah,
So.
I think you might be asking, and clarify with me if you're not, if a student can have a completely virtual band class. And so would they, what we do right now in our virtual program, or what we did last year, when we had students in grades 6 through 12 enrolled in virtual, if they chose an activity like band, they came to school
Okay.
for that 1 hour.
Okay.
So that is what we would need in that type of elective.
Okay. Very good. Was there any consideration, did y'all talk about any type of a hybrid option? It sounds like we've got an either in-person or virtual. Was there any discussion about some variation thereof? And what were your thoughts or conclusions there?
Well, we really already offer a hybrid option for our high school students. They have the option of taking some virtual classes through UVLA. We did discuss it and talk about it at other levels. Not something that at this time the committee is recommending, and we felt like, as I mentioned, really our goals tonight were to make sure everybody understood what the options were. I'm going to say what 2 options. At one point we talked about 3, we talked about, there's all kinds of different things that we considered, but make sure that people knew what the 2 options were for the learning pathways, and to put out there a broad understanding of what, if you do send your kids to in-person, this is what to expect as some of our safety protocol. We're continuing, I mean, one of the things we get to discuss this week is nebulizers. When do you use them? How often do you allow them to be used? Where are they used? Because there's some research out there on the amount of vapor that they put out in the air. So there are a lot of these little things that we get to discuss over the next month before school starts. But the idea is we wanted our parents to understand our plan is to start school on August 17th. We plan to offer in-person on August 17th. And these are the main protocol that we're going to take to try to protect our students and our staff. I mean, that is one thing we've talked about, the research out there, talking about there's a fewer number of kids that suffer consequences from catching the virus. Well, we have our staff members that we also have to keep in mind, and how do we protect them from, a virus that may one of the kids may have. So I'll say it's been a very challenging committee. Anybody that got put on it has probably had some regrets about that. And it's just starting, because we are getting down to, some of the very, we call it getting into the weeds, right? About how we're going to handle certain circumstances, what we do with kids when they test positive, and what do they have to do to return? What about staff members? So, our goal tonight is to ask you to approve the recommendation, the plan that we have right now, with the understanding that quite likely every Wednesday and Friday, we will have an update of that plan on the website, because there are going to continue to be things that come out. There have been things that have come out from the government officials, and also we when this all started, everybody was worried about surfaces. Now we realize it a little bit more. We understand more about the virus. So that's what I'm presenting to the board tonight, is consideration of the plan as is, knowing that we have another committee meeting tomorrow at 1:30, and quite likely we'll spend all tomorrow night adjusting what the committee decided on, and we'll make modifications to the plan on Wednesday, and then we'll start our committee meeting again on Thursday. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Charlie, but just we're asking the questions that people are asking.
I know, no.
And so
no,
we
no,
just,
I know, I appreciate
we want to
that.
know, there were only so many people on the committee, so the rest of us are wanting to hear the thought processes and the reasons behind what we can and cannot do.
Yeah.
So to that effect, my next question is, what was the discussion around doing like half days or 2 days a week and dividing the student body in half, that sort of?
So probably one of the biggest discussions we had is trying to be respectful of the needs of our community. And when we go to a schedule in which we're only, let's say we're taking a day off in the middle of the week, what we're hearing is that's a very difficult thing to do to our parents. And so if the goal is to have our kids in school, we try to be respectful of that. It's one of the reasons why I'm going to propose the calendar change, because we realize that late start Friday takes away some consistency. And right now we're in an environment where consistency would be very beneficial. We also realize that we can't pack 400 kids into a cafeteria at one time, right, and have teachers supervising them like we've done in the past. And so we need to honor some of that. But the main thing that we've looked at is trying to get back to school on a normal schedule so that we provided that consistency to our parents, provide that consistency to our kids. We did look at it. We talked about as recent today, and some of us have talked about block scheduling and the impact of that, and it sounds really easy, but you have one grade that's on a 7-period day, and you have teachers that travel, and you have kids that travel, and does it all match up? So it has been considered the A-B schedule, where we might go. I know the young lady made the recommendation of, maybe a morning shift and an evening shift. We discussed some of those options, but felt like the best plan for our community was to have school as close to traditional as possible when we do resume in August.
Well, I'd like to add to that also that we felt like it was more fair to our teachers to do the 5 days in person, because if we're splitting a schedule, then we're asking a teacher to every day be a distance learning teacher and an in-person teacher in order to care for every student, versus they're an in-person teacher unless a building closes, and then they become a distance learning teacher. Because the virtual teachers would be completely separate from all of this. It's a different program. Those teachers would start virtual and stay virtual, and the closing of buildings would not affect them. So really, when we're talking about in-person, I think that we were worried also about what that would mean for teachers trying to, what else are we loading on teachers if we try to split our kids?
I had several questions about sick day exceptions, that obviously in this environment, somebody might be incurring more than what the norm is, and certainly not wanting to discourage the use of that. So is that being addressed, will be addressed? I know that's not back to school policy, but it's a genuine concern of people.
Yes, we have discussed that at length, and HR is actually in the process at looking at our options for acquiring substitutes, looking at what would be feasible for us. We do have our substitute pool, but realizing it might need to be expanded, looking at what those options are. So they are in the process of doing that right now. We will adhere to our policy that is in place for sick days for teachers, and also the CARES Act that is in place for any exemptions.
One thing is I mentioned on some of the recommendations for transportation, for example. We know that there's a possibility that we'll have a shortage of drivers at some point, right? So since transportation isn't necessarily a required option that we have to provide, then we're going to try to minimize the effect on our entire population without closing school. we're still searching for what we think is that magic number, right? That there will be some point, if this continues to increase in terms of numbers, where we may struggle with the staff that we have. I know Mr. Logreen is actively working with some providers for additional substitutes to have. If we need those, we're looking at the schedules that we have, and part of the reason why the survey is so critical is to get some of that, I manipulated is the wrong word, but moving people around and knowing what we have matched up and knowing what we have. I've been joking that this year, 2020, has gone so well that I'm sure it's going to match up just perfect. You know, and you know, those are things that we're going to continue to have to struggle with. There may be situations where we get to a point and just say we can't have school. You know, we don't have the people. We don't, or it doesn't make sense for us to continue. We do want to go forward with the plan to reopen, with the hope that we do get to reopen on August 17th, and preparing. You know, I want to brag on the teaching and learning folks because they have done an exceptional job of lining out what our distance learning plan will be. We know last spring that when we had to close, that we weren't necessarily prepared for that. And I don't think that's a criticism, because we had hospitals contacting us because they weren't prepared, right? And so we are now very confident in the plan that we have going forward on the instructional side, but there is still that tough decision for the parents to make regarding whether or not they feel comfortable sending their kids back to in-person learning, and whether or not they feel like the virtual option is satisfactory. I mean, our initial surveys, that's really the two issues. Number one issue for most folks was safety of their children. Number two issue was whether or not the distance learning was adequate. So I feel like those options are lined out really well, and the educational component is set and a good offering for our kids.
Do we, with a lot of what you said, do we need to push the start date of school back further? Because I'm even getting texts while I'm sitting here from parents that feel like they don't have time to make that decision, that we're giving them like 10 days to make that decision. And, you know, are we, you know, I feel like if I'm trying to make that decision, what courses are my child going to be able to take? What are they not going to be able to take? Like, I need a little more information to make those choices. I know that's a huge question, Dr. Hartzler.
Well, let me respond to that by saying certainly that is a consideration. That start date is not something that is required by the state of Oklahoma. Now, we obviously have to meet certain number of hours for accreditation purposes, but again, we start later. It just simply means we would then end the school year later. So if you were to move the calendar back, and that's certainly, that is an option, but just know that that comes then with the issue of if you start later, you're going to also end the school year later. But again, Ms. Romerman, if that's something that you would like for us to consider.
I know that we can't come up with the most perfect plan that is so great for everybody, and we can't keep delaying it, trying to hope to get something that everybody's happy with. But I might feel just a little bit that we're a little tight here. I don't know if the rest of the board feels that way or not.
Well, I do know that other school districts have had even shorter turnaround times than this to choose whether or not they're virtual. And I'm not advocating one way or another, just information, but I feel like a lot of people have already made that decision, whether they want their kid to go virtual or not. And you're looking at more, will the reality work for them? Like, do we offer the classes their kid wants to take? But I feel like most people have already made that decision, and there's going to be very little thinking about it. So,
Well, and we have the ability to push that deadline back. I mean, that is a consideration we can have. It certainly squeezes things a little tighter in trying to prepare for school, for the teachers and knowing where the placements are going to be. You know, we've actually gone back and forth. It was the 29th at one point, it was the 22nd, 24th, 27th, you know, and so if that's something that you all feel like we need to do, we can continue to have that discussion and push it back a little bit.
I think that's probably a good recommendation. I would probably favor that. I'm not here to press for pushing the start date back necessarily, but if an extra week could be squeezed in to give parents time, I think that would be greatly appreciated.
And we talked about, I think it was the Monday, because the 22nd is what, a Friday?
Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay, so part of the reason we talked about that was we know that all the fun work gets to get done on Saturday and Sunday, and we wanted to get that stuff back, and so if we pushed it back to the next week, which would give the parents over the weekend, you know, we could certainly do that.
Once we have the information back from both parents and our teachers, that's when we will have to make the appropriate decisions for our staff.
Right.
So we cannot make those decisions until we have the information from the parents. We can certainly, like the 22nd is a Wednesday. If we pushed that to, I don't have my phone on me, that Monday, what's that Monday?
27th.
The 27th. I think the 27th would definitely be something that we can work with. We know that the principals, you know, we've indicated in the letter that should a parent have a question, that they need to contact the school, and we will need to respond to those questions.
I think that gives a full 2 weeks from tonight, and I'm
Okay.
assuming the plan would be posted tonight. I know we've talked at length about it, but
I believe the surveys are going to be sent out tomorrow to the parents.
And when will the teachers get their surveys?
The teachers are also getting their surveys tomorrow. And tomorrow we are also going to make available to all the teachers, we will send them an email with all of the plans, the distance learning plan. We have documents with professional development that begins next week on how do you deliver virtual learning, regardless of whether you're on the virtual platform or if you are in person and have to go distance. So we're covering both of those. So PD is starting quickly. We actually had some teachers enrolled in PD last week. So all of this information will be available to our teachers tomorrow. We will send an email. It will also be in a Teams folder internally for teachers so that they have one place to go and look for the most updated information and not have to figure out which email that was.
right. Will we be able to post this plan on our website this evening, or at least tomorrow?
The reentry?
Yes.
I believe it is, Chris.
It's already out there.
It is posted as a draft.
Okay.
And so that will change with approval.
Very good.
On our survey, or with the link, if a parent chooses virtual, does it include a link that tells parents what classes are offered virtually, or can it?
No, I know that there is not a link right now. We can certainly look at that.
Or at least some way to make it easy for parents to find that. If it's not a link, if it's, here's how to find it on the website.
Sure.
So we don't have parents, so we
Sure.
make that decision easier, so they have a place to find all the.
Okay.
Because when you're looking at, you know, it's not NCAA accredited, you're looking at are there AP classes or
Sure.
not. I know my own son needs to take physics, and we don't offer that. So, you know, parents need to know some of those decisions when they're choosing whether or not to do virtual versus in-person. And again, I would remind everybody that for juniors and seniors, that there's options to take just 1 or 2 virtual classes also if you if you choose.
Yeah, the high school, especially for 11th and 12th graders, really is already a hybrid. So there are very few 11th and 12th graders in our district that take 7 classes, is it 6 or 7? I'm sorry. All their classes in a physical seat with a teacher. So most of them are already taking like a hybrid blend. I don't know if that could be, I know the students have already enrolled in classes for next year. I don't know if they could be given, sorry, principals, another option to choose a more hybrid approach than they perhaps would have in the, when they enrolled in the spring.
There are times where students can change their schedules, yes.
Okay.
Dr. Hartzler, just got one more procedural question here. There are some who would advocate that there's no way we should be returning to school, period. Is that determined at the state level, or is that determined at the school board level?
So that decision, in my opinion, certainly is much easier to make if it's at the state level as what we had happen to us in March.
Right.
In my discussions with the state superintendent, which I do serve on the advisory board, this decision is going to be left up to the local decision or local districts to make. But I think an important point to make here is that all this is so fluid for us as the COVID changes almost daily in terms of numbers. And the thing that I think we have to recognize, Mr. Bushy had alluded to earlier, is that this is a very fluid document, and that is why we date it like version 1, July 8, 2020. This document could certainly change as the COVID, if you will, changes. So to answer your question, Mr. Kinnear, it's always much easier if for some reason the state superintendent or the governor said, we're going to stay maybe the opening of the school year. Those of you who have seen the news notice that in Los Angeles, I think it was today, they have indicated that school will not be in session in the fall. I have received, I can tell you, a lot of emails in regard to this, and I'm pleased to receive them. Unfortunately, I'm not able to address all of them. It's just humanly impossible to do that. But the dominant narrative that I'm hearing from our patrons and from parents, mainly obviously parents, is the fact they like the idea that we are moving forward with a plan. Although not perfect, it's still a plan. I also think the learning options are something that they, they're hearing a little bit about it, that we're going to try to provide some options to them. That is a good thing, but again, it's not going to be perfect. And I would advise us all to understand that nothing is going to be perfect in regard to what we're dealing with right now. So we just kind of have to take it one step at a time. And what this plan allows us to do, it allows me to have some flexibility that if for some reason we have staff members, or let's say we have a spike in COVID in a particular site or in a particular division to where we're not able to have school, I can be able to say we are distance learning, okay, if you are an in-person student in the plan, which means that is the default to the learning, and they just transition quickly to that. I really do believe personally that we need to work to try to be back in school as much as possible, and then we'll do everything we can to try to make sure that we can do this in a safe manner. But again, we don't really control this issue right now. We know that it's based on how COVID is spreading, if you will.
I appreciate you all taking all the questions. And I'm ready to move for approval.
Can I make one more comment real quick? So you've brought up some great questions. I know within the last 48 hours, we've received at least, I want to say 12 pages of questions that we're trying to go through, and our committee will get to delve into those. So one of our goals is to try to put out an FAQ that's out there. You know, your comments about the classes, I think we can put together a list of what classes are available. There's sometimes other options. I don't know if parents would ever want to do this, but there's other classes that could be purchased, right? That if they're not available, we just have to, we'll put together that list, and it'll be one of our goals over the next week to put as part of this document an FAQ section. But again, want to stress, things have changed so many times, even within the committee, over what has happened. When we started this 2 months ago, the city of Tulsa was opening up and business was getting back to normal, right? And then very quickly things shifted and we saw changes. So I can't even anticipate what we'll read in the paper tomorrow about what is happening with this. So, but I think the FAQs are a great addition to this, and as long as you're okay with that, I think that's something we would want to add on there, knowing that we're going to continue to add answers to those questions as time goes on, because they keep coming up. I mean, there's just a lot of different scenarios.
I'm sure there's no end.
Pardon me?
I'm sure there's no end to the questions.
There
that
is
we
no
could
end.
sit and come here,
Yeah.
come up with.
And in that vein, I do have one more question that I've been asked, and that is if we've heard anything from Tulsa Tech or TCC for our high school students that are in those programs for part of their day.
Well, I had access to Tulsa Tech's plan about 2.5 months ago, and
Right,
I will
that's all
tell
that's
you
on
that
their
it
website.
won't work with it doesn't appear that it would work with the current conditions. So I anticipate we'll get more from them. And TCC.
So we don't have any information from them yet.
We know that TCC will be offering virtual classes. So if a student at Union, even our face-to-face TCC courses will be offered virtually. We are working right now on a location where students who would normally go to that class face-to-face with a TCC instructor to be in a location together where they could be online. It will be synchronous.
For what, I'm sorry?
It will be a teacher presenting the lesson.
Okay, so they might still go to the same classroom within Union where they went for class?
We're not certain if it'll be the same location. The students are also given the opportunity, if they are enrolled in the TCC course, to go maybe to a soft seating area that might be open. They could also go home during that time, as we offer our students in high school.
Right. So we're really just waiting to hear what Tech is going to offer. Okay.
So my takeaways from tonight are that this plan is not 100%, it's our jumping off point. And we're adding information to our parents to make these choices, and we're giving them an additional 5 days to look at those plans and decide what they want to do. And we're also going to mesh that information with the communication we get back from our teachers. Did I get that right?
I think our goal over the next few days is try to accumulate a list of what classes are going to be available virtually. And then there will be other questions that will come up from that. Well, what if I need this and it's not available? So the plan, and I know it's really odd for us to bring something to you knowing it's not complete for a vote. We're getting indications that we're going to need to have a board-approved plan by the Oklahoma State Department of Health in place, and knowing that this is going to continue to change. My plan is when we come in on August 10th, we'll again have a presentation of where we're at on it, and that will be 7 days before school starts. And so I do. That's why I'm bringing it to you now, is because we're getting some indication from some of these agencies that we need to have an approved plan. Well, and I could get a little sarcastic here, but all of these agencies are providing us no guidance on what we're supposed to do, yet setting terms on us on what we have to do. And so it's a little difficult when we look through it. I know the LA superintendent finally said, somebody had to make a decision. You know, we weren't getting any guidance, and somebody had to make a decision. And, you know, so I apologize for that. I wish the plan was complete. I know that if we had completed the plan 2 months ago, it would not have been correct, because things have changed so much over that amount of time. So, and I anticipate there will be other changes in this as well.
So move to approve.
So with this motion, we talked about moving the date from the 22nd. Now, I know the rationale when we set the 22nd was we want time to be able to figure out which teachers, where they're going to be, are they going to be virtual, are they going to be in person, all that mixing things together to make it work out perfectly, as you said. That's why we did the 22nd. We move it back, we are now scrambling to make sure that that all happens. So if we left it at the 22nd, we're going to have procrastinators no matter what you do. We set it to the 27th, people are still not going to be done. They're not going to make their choice. So I would second if we left it as it is, with knowing we have a little bit of playtime, that we can move that date should we need to. Should that come to it, that we absolutely have to move that date where people don't have enough information, where it's impossible for them to make that choice, then we extend a date. This forces people to make their decision, to not procrastinate 8 days. I haven't seen what it is that we have to do to make the enrollment. It could take an hour, I don't know. I haven't done the survey. But if it doesn't take that long, and if it's not that hard of a choice, 8 days is enough. There may be some people that may need some more time, but I don't think we should put the burden on us to have to scramble in the end to change our teachers and do all that when people can do it now.
And so I will say, listening to the questions and the concerns that you have received, it will be important for parents to know what those possible virtual options are. It's not, a virtual option does not look identical to an in-person choice. So I can see where we will need to provide that information. And once it's provided, hopefully a parent can make that decision by looking at the options. The parent in choosing, we would assume that under normal circumstances, parents want their child in in-person class. There's no debate or confusion that education is delivered better in person. And so, number one, I believe a parent is looking at the health concerns of their child. We do offer virtual that allows just simply virtual in grades 6 through 12 that offers the parent the choice that prior to COVID they could have chosen. Mm-hmm. That option is still there. They may choose to a virtual education, and should their child want to be involved in fine arts, they would come to school for that 1 hour. We're not taking away that choice. But right now, we're looking at the health issue of COVID. And so parents, they're asking the health question first. And then part of their planning will be, okay, I have a high school student. I'm concerned about the health of my child. I also want to know what classes are available. So I completely understand that that would be a part of the decision-making process. And I feel that we can provide that information quickly.
As you said that, it just occurred to me that in this decision for pre-K through what grade, is there actually not like a class choice? I mean, obviously in our elementary, they're going to get elementary curriculum. As you stated, the virtual for the elementary is going to be the regular elementary curriculum taught through one of our teachers virtually. So there's not going to be a class choice if you're elementary.
That is correct.
At what, 6th, 7th, 8th, at what point do we start would be looking at, you've got to really intensely look at, do we offer the classes that you want? Is it fairly simple
You know,
at 6th, 7th, 8th?
there are standard classes for 6th and 7th grade students. It varies a little bit more. There is a little bit of variance, but not a lot. Because in virtual education, in what we've provided in 6 through 12, there are a few set electives. They might not look identical to the electives that we offer in in-person learning.
So we're really talking about what classes are offered being an issue for our 9th through 12th.
Correct.
So for parents of pre-K through 8th grade students, it really is a decision of, do you want virtual or do you want in person?
Correct.
There's no research required.
We're looking at the core classes. So specifically with our pre-K through 5, the core would be literacy, math, social studies, and science.
Okay.
I have to say, hopefully, if we do have up to a third of our students choosing virtual, that makes me feel better that we may have a little bit more space in those rooms for those bodies to kind of spread out a little bit. So everyone that chooses a virtual option is kind of helping everybody else space out as well.
So true.
All right, so is it still up for discussion whether or not the survey date is at the 22nd or the 27th?
I think Sammy's right. I think if people just had more information on what they were choosing, I really think that's really the issue. I don't know if the time's the issue as much as what are we picking? Isn't that what we're deciding right now, is just giving them more information on what they're picking between virtual and in person?
We are approving the plan as written. And I don't know if that date is in this plan or not.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
I see it now. So right now, yes, right now, if we approve this, we are approving as written Wednesday, July 22nd by 5 p.m.
We do have a motion and a second.
So is there additional discussion over the 22nd versus the 27th?
I would favor the 27th.
If you guys feel like you can do it, having 27th be the date, I think
What's
it
the
should be.
hardship that we're putting on the district realistically, moving the date to the 27th? And what's the hardship that we're putting on teachers?
Yes. Yes. I'm pausing to gather my thoughts as Mr. Logering steps up.
The concern from the district perspective on that is that if we wait until the 27th, that gives us just over 2 weeks to reschedule all the teachers and all the classes, tell them what they are now teaching and where they will now be. And from the teacher perspective, I know I've been hearing from probably 120 so far. What are we teaching? When are we teaching? How are we doing it? They're asking all the same questions that the students and parents are. But the problem is if they've only got from the 20th, if we get it all on the 27th, we've still got to put it together. And to be able to do that, it's sometime later that week to go and say, okay, Miss Churchill, you're now teaching 9th grade history because that's what's open. Or you wanted virtual. Sorry, Dina, I picked on you. Not certified. And we're going to have to go through a process. We've already gotten over 50 teachers who've already said they want to teach virtually. So we're going to have to go through, do they have a health condition? Do they have the certifications, and how many student needs are there? To match all of that up is going to take some time, and if we're waiting until the 27th, I'm concerned that we're not going to have enough time to give these teachers time to say, okay, here's what you're teaching now, and I've only given you just over a week and a half before school starts.
It's like the chicken before the egg.
So let me ask the question this way. If most of the board members feel like we should move the date back to the 27th, should we then also look at moving the start of school back another week in order to make it fair for our teachers, in order to give time for our administrators to schedule any kid who is moving from what they enrolled in the high school in the spring to a different schedule? That's going to take a lot of administrator time as well to get them rescheduled. So if we want to move this out to the 27th, what I'm hearing is then we also need to look at starting school later than August 17th. Because what we're also not taking into account, we're saying August 17th, but our teachers actually come back on August 10th. So they need to know by August 10th. And that's giving the district only 2 weeks to turn around and tell every teacher what they're going to be teaching, what building they're going to be in. Do they need to be ready to teach virtually? Do they need to be ready to teach in person?
So let me weigh in on that. What I'm hearing from the board, as well as looking at some reactions from the audience here, if the recommendation is that we move back the 27th, and I also would recommend that we move the start of school back. Certainly we can do that this evening the way it is written on the calendar. It's just that we would need to make a recommendation on the next item that that's what we would do. I think that makes perfect sense. I am very nervous about saying that we would move this option back another week, and then I'm looking at our staff members.
Yeah.
They are very, very nervous about trying to then piece all this together, of which I'm telling you, it's not going to line up perfect. There's no way it will. And we also are trying to be mindful of our staff members in terms of health concerns that they might have and where we could best place them. So again, if you were to consider moving this as it is written to the 27th, and certainly you can do that with a recommendation as part of this recommendation, I would then be in favor of considering moving back the start of school by at least 1 week, And Mr. Bushyhead, Ms. Calvin, I'm looking at you all and thinking, where do you want to end up with that?
Our next board item is changing school calendar. So the proposal on that is going to be that we not have late start Friday, add on 2 days, and start on the 17th. If we push that back a week and started on the 24th, and didn't have late start Friday, then our last day of school is the 25th of May, which is currently one of our snow days. Now, one of the silver lining of this whole thing is snow days quite likely will not ever happen, because we will transition.
There's no need.
Don't say that, it's 2020. We didn't think any of this stuff.
Yeah.
But it's because of distance learning, not because
So,
it will be a blizzard.
I mean,
It's gonna snow
in the
in May.
event that if the decision was made to have the first day of school started the 24th, what I would propose, because we wouldn't have 10 days of professional development, we would move our professional development to that 17th. Now, one of the reasons why we wanted to add the 2 days during that week while teachers were reporting was the concerns that, especially with the littles, that meet the teacher possibilities, we weren't going to have them come in large groups and just funnel them through, so we needed to spread that out over a longer period of time. So we could back everything up. Jamie's the calendar master, so I hope she's double checking what I'm saying. But if we move the professional development to the 17th through the 21st, started our first day on the 24th, our last day of school would then be May 25th, which is the Tuesday.
That's correct.
And if we, it's possible. And
Ms. Churchill, do you have any thoughts on what we've been discussing?
I think it's a good idea, to do that.
So the motion to approve this plan, if there's not any other discussion I've missed, is that we will move this request for virtual learning to Monday, July 27th by 5 p.m. And that is with the understanding that on our next agenda item, that with our next agenda item that we are also going to move the start of school back a week. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to consider and take action on recommendations made by the District Reentry Task Force in regards to the return to school guidelines, with the change made that the virtual learning request must be submitted by 5 p.m. on Monday, July 27th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
I second.
All right. Ms. Romerman,
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Ford,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes as well.
Can I add one more thing? I've also got some requests. People would, if you can, when you're providing more information about coursework for the high school, there's a lot of questions about what K through 5 will look like in the classroom, and if we could pop that up there somehow so that, parents could have a. I know that a lot of that's really fluid, but as much information as we can add about that would be helpful.
Your 3 minutes is.
Well, and you can repeat this. I would offer.
It's on now.
You're on.
Okay. I would offer that people can directly send emails to me too, because all of the emails that we're getting regarding, because most of them that you're getting questions on, we get forwarded anyway, and we're trying to go through those and assign who those need to go to so we can get those answers. Because I have to be honest with you, there's been some questions that have been asked that were like, wish we would have thought that or thought about that, or we've never thought about that, right? So there are 3 bushy heads in the district now, so it is bushyhead.charlie@unionps.org for anybody in here that wants to send questions, and those go directly to the committee every Tuesday and Thursday after we go through some of those. So whatever those questions are, please also continue to send those to us so we can go through those.
Oh,
All right.
Andy has pictures. Oh, great.
Okay. Next item. Consider and take action on a revision to the 2020-2021 school calendar. Mr. Bushyhead.
Well, I don't really know how to present this. So I am asking for the board to consider a revision to the school calendar, where we would add 2 professional days at the start of the school year, which would be on August 13th and August 14th. Our original start date was August 13th. And so we would gain those hours by eliminating late start Friday for this year only, and we would have enough minutes to count towards our 1080 for state accreditation. And our end date would remain the same on May 18th, which is a Tuesday. We kept the 6 snow days built in there, just because there wasn't a reason to change it at this point. Based on our previous conversation, I would recommend that the board, can I do this?
Yes, you
Okay. Just one.
I'll move to accept the calendar.
Is our attorney gone? I may need help. So based on our previous discussion, I would recommend that we have our first day of school be August 24th, and our last day of school be May 25th. We would have 5 professional days on the week of August 17th through August 21st. All other things would remain the same. We would change our daily schedule so that Friday, we would not have late start Friday throughout the year. And I can discuss that more if you need me to.
And just for clarification, we're saying that the last scheduled school day would be May 25th. There would in fact be 6 additional snow days after that, which could make the last day of school as late as June 2nd, should we have another blizzard that keeps us from being able to have distance learning school.
Well, and I don't know that it's a bad idea for us to still have 3 snow days built in there, because I'm going to say that there is a possibility that things could change in the middle of the year. I mean, The schedule creation, I mean, I will say I don't miss it as a principal. I feel bad for our staff because we have to go back and recreate those. If we have a large number of students that choose to go from virtual to in-person second semester, or have a large number go from in-person to virtual, we have to go back and recreate a lot of the scheduling. So I would recommend, just for us to have the ability to build 3 days in there, that we may need to just close to get things taken care of. I don't know that that's a bad idea.
So you're suggesting we leave only 3 snow days in versus 6?
Yeah, we would, our last day would be May 25th, and our 3 snow days would be built in through May 28th. I don't think there's any harm in doing that.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right. Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
Ms. Romerman?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well.
Thank you all so much for all your hard work. Thank you so much.
Okay, hopefully it gets easier from here on out. All right.
Don't say that.
Sorry. Consider and take action on the purchase of professional development services for secondary core teachers and administrative staff with Max Teaching Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $72,000 from grant funds. Ms. Gray.
Hi, good evening, President McAdams, Dr. Hartzler, members of the board. So I am recommending that we approve the funds for Max Teaching to continue our partnership with our secondary core teachers. This is funded through the O-Circle Literacy Grant. We are going into our 3rd year of our partnership with Max Teaching, really focusing on building the capacity of our secondary core teachers through teacher cohorts. And part of this is with, of course, with literacy strategies and embedding the research implementation for those strategies, both for our English learners as well as striving readers. But this is kind of in a 2-part fold. So the first part is we originally, with our cohort 2 with Max Teaching, was going to wrap up the school year at the end of March after spring break, and we were not able to complete our embedded coaching at the time. And so part of this recommendation is to wrap up that embedded coaching for cohort 2, and then also bring in that embedded coaching for our 3rd cohort of teachers this year through the literacy grant. We do have a plan for in-person, and then we also have a contingency plan for virtual if we need to go that direction when we are prepared.
Move for approval.
Second.
All right. Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
Ms. Romerman?
Yes.
The chair votes yes as well.
Thank you.
All right. First reading of proposed revision to Board Policy 5035, progress reports and report cards. Dr. Nelson.
Yes, Dr. Hartzler, President McAdams, and the board. This is a recommendation to amend policy 5035 on progress reports and report cards. It involves 2 changes in practice. It removes the specific requirement for an elementary teacher to send home a progress report in writing that's signed by a parent, returned within 3 days. It allows our elementary teachers to confer with parents through a variety of means. They still need to send home a progress report, but it could be through an email that gets confirmed. They could make a phone call that also gets confirmed. So it allows for some more flexibility than what is an antiquated way for them to have to follow the board policy in terms of the way it's written right now. The second change is that we're recommending that we no longer print and mail secondary report cards. And we realize this is a large change, large scale for us, but increasingly our parents are using the online parent portal and the app on their phone, which provides not only grades in real time, assignments that are completed, grades on assignments or missing assignments, attendance data and assessment data at the fingertips of the parents. We are making sure that from the 6th grade on, all of our students are accessing their grades online and are aware of how to do that. Many of them go home and show their parents. Our parent portal numbers are increasing in terms of their logging in, and we can track that. We send emails to parents who aren't logging in to remind them that they can with a link on that. So we believe that this practice, we're ready for that. Our enrollment center plans on trying to have all parents that are of new enrollees to access the parent portal before they even leave the enrollment center, so that it becomes the standard practice from the day that the student becomes a union student. We also have a committee that Teresa Kiger is leading with some elementary representatives to investigate how we might phase out the printing of elementary report cards, but that doesn't necessarily have to happen. A parent can print a report card themselves if they want one or need one for driver's license, insurance, things like that. A parent can print an unofficial transcript right now from the middle school on up. And certainly our staff at our schools would print a report card upon request if a parent needed us to do one for them. And we can do that at the ESC as well, upon request. We can email that or mail it if we need to. So.
All right. Are there any questions?
No.
Okay. Well, this is the first reading, so this will go out to be considered and then voted on next month.
Thank you.
Correct? Yes. All right. Next item, consider and take action on the 2-year renewal of the Imagine Learning software subscriptions for EL students at all elementary sites in the 6th, 7th grade in the amount of $325,059 from bond funds. Dr. Nelson.
Yeah, this is a 2-year renewal of the software we use to provide part of the English language development instruction for students in the earlier years of their language development. And so about half, a little more than half of our earlier language learners use this product. It's designed to be used between 20 and 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So students get practice with that. And that represents subscriptions that are used at all of our elementary schools and the 6th and 7th grade center. We've been using it since 2012. We have evidence that students grow an additional, let's say, a half a year of growth if they're using the product in general regularly along with the instruction that teachers provide. So it's a supplemental tool. It doesn't do all of the instruction, but it does assist in the process of learning, particularly the early ELs.
Yeah, you addressed part of my question. You feel like you're seeing the results in test scores and overall literacy?
Yes, on the access test in particular, which has the 4 domains of reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And the reading test on access is on par with a state test generally in terms of a reading test. So we are seeing growth that we believe this is worth using. Yes, we did a study on that this past year looking at 2 years of access data and the student usage in completing lessons on the product in order to evaluate that.
And so this supplement is in-school supplement, or is it at home? Is it?
It actually works both. So if we move to a distance learning format, or if some of our ELs, if their parents choose the virtual option, our students at home can still access and use the product, and we can monitor their progress.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions?
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
All right. Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
Ms. Romerman?
Yes.
The chair votes yes as well. All right. Consider and take action to approve the 2-year purchase of the Renaissance Learning software subscriptions for secondary schools in the amount of $79,878.50 from bond funds. Dr. Nelson.
Yes, I think you may be aware we use the Renaissance Learning products, Star Reading, Star Math, Accelerated Reader, Accelerated Math, in various ways in all of our schools. This is particularly the renewal of the purchase of Star Reading for our secondary schools, 6 through 12. We originally purchased this alongside of a requirement with the $1.4 million called O-Circle grant that Chastity Gray leads. She was just speaking about that. And this meets the requirement of having that assessment to go along with the grant in order to assess progress of students. So we're still required to have that for an additional year. We're proposing a 2-year purchase because in working with our secondary administrators and teachers on this, they indicate that the data has been useful and they would like to continue to use the product even after the literacy grant is through. So we're recommending to continue with the 2-year purchase of this product. So.
All right, any comments?
Move to approve?
Second.
All right, Mr. Kinnear,
Yes.
Ms. Ford,
Yes.
Ms. Romerman,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
chair votes yes as well.
Thank you.
All right, under school operations, consider and take action on the purchase of the Incident IQ platform IIQ assets from Incident IQ in the amount of $55,795 from bond funds. Mr. Borland.
Yes, good evening, President McAdams, Dr. Hartzler, Board. This will be an asset management system for us. It's going to allow us to track all of our different assets we have. In our department, we have about 30,000 assets that we manage. Once Jay gets all the teachers placed, and we know where the kids are going to be in schedule, we have about 15,000 devices we have to identify, label, and tag where they're going to go and deliver them to the classroom. So we really need a system that's quick, robust, that we can check out devices as well as check in when they come back in the fall, hopefully.
So this will save you man hours.
Well, it's going to create me man hours, but it's going to make it easier to do the man hours. So it's never easy, but.
So is it how does it work? Is it a scanning process and then it goes into a database?
Yeah, so it does it both ways. With the web interface or an app on the phone, whereas our current system is just strictly web interface. It's really cumbersome and clunky. The new one's web or app. It can take the camera from the phone and scan a barcode and enter it directly into the system. We don't have to have a separate scanner that runs out of batteries. It's all through the phone. We can also tie assets to a room. So when we walk into a room, we can scan the room and know all the assets tied to that room. And when we walk in, we can make sure all those assets are present that are supposed to be in there. So we can quickly, easily identify what's supposed to be in the room, what's not supposed to be in the room.
And so could you track it by name or by number?
We can track by name, by number, by student. We can track how many devices that students checked out, how many times they've broken a device, how many times we've repaired a device, who's had a device. If a device is found, we can find out who owns it. Pretty much anything we want to do with an asset.
Okay. Move for approval.
Second.
All right, Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Ms. Ford,
Yes.
Ms. Romerman,
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes as well.
Thank you.
All right, consider and take action to accept the bid and award the bid for snack foods to U.S. Food Service in the amount of $85,000 from Child Nutrition Fund and approve the associated blanket purchase order. Ms. Griffin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening. It's afternoon to me.
We'll let you talk since you've waited so long.
I'll be in a pool in about 4 hours. Anyway, I would like to ask your approval for award of a snack bid to U.S. Food Service in the amount of $85,000, and I hope that we have children that will hopefully be purchasing some snacks in sometime this year, hopefully.
Move for approval.
Second?
All right, Mr. Kinnear,
Yes.
Ms. Romerman,
Yes.
Ms. Ford,
Yes.
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes as well. Consider and take action on the agreement with KSQ Design for architectural design services related to the 6th, 7th grade center cafeteria renovations project in the amount of $51,750 from Child Nutrition Funds. Mr. Isaacs.
Yes, Dr. Hartzler, President McAdams, members of the board, good evening. This is a remodel of the 6th and 7th grade center of the cafeteria. We formed a special selection committee that consisted of Lisa, the Director of Child Nutrition, and David, Director of Purchasing. We went out with formal solicitations to find an architect that we felt was qualified, and we found one. KSQ predominantly does nothing but high-volume kitchen, commercial kitchen remodels all over the country, and they're actually based in Tulsa. So some of the projects they have done is University of Colorado. They had a 3-story student dorm cafeteria that was a remodel, and the Jinx main cafeteria was a remodel. And what we noticed about their experience was that they do a lot of remodels, a lot of not just new cafeterias. A lot of the architects that we saw submit packages were just new cafeterias, it was new construction. But they had a lot of experience with remodels. So in this first phase with your approval tonight, what they're going to focus on is kind of programming what our cafeteria should look like, and then coming up with the schematic designs. And they'll work closely with Lisa and food services to come up with that. So we believe this would probably be on the next bond series. So we have time to really focus on trying to make it right.
So we're looking at the kitchen area of the 6th and 7th grade, where we're cooking food and serving food?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
And the cafeteria itself.
And the cafeteria itself,
Yeah,
okay.
you can call me.
Will it help anything with sound out?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I want to expand on that. One of the things that when we're looking at the cafeteria was also the eating areas, how we could divide those up and possibly create another space. We believe through the programming that we will end up with a really significant remodel of the 6th, 7th grade center. When we look at how the day goes, right, and what they need, there are some design elements in that building that just create more to the chaos, right, that you just don't. You have a centrally located restroom, for example, on each floor in one area. Well, that creates problems when you have kids coming from 12 different classrooms, right? And so we feel like this all started with the discussion of the cafeteria, how we would make the eating area. If you've ever been there during lunch, you know you don't go back, right? But the whole idea is this is starting out as a kitchen/eating area remodel that we really feel like is going to grow into an opportunity for us to make some changes to the 6th, 7th grade center that would make that a much more positive learning environment, not just during the lunchtime. So we think it's going to grow, which is why we're projecting that this is going to be on the next 5-year bond series. So.
Okay.
Shout out to Lisa Griffin that Child Nutrition is paying for this construction.
I know.
That's fantastic.
Oh, that's great.
Move for approval?
Second.
All right. Ms. Romerman?
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, finance. Consider and take action on renewal of the agreement and manage portfolio service rider with Constellation New Energy Gas Division, LLC, in the amount of $170,000, a blanket PO previously approved at the June 12, 2020 special board meeting, to continue providing third-party natural gas for the 2020-2021 fiscal year, authorize the Director of Purchasing and Supply Management as the superintendent's designee to add additional qualifying third-party natural gas meters to the district's account, execute fixed pricing confirmations, and sign any necessary documents associated with the changes and confirmations. Dr. Williams.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. This is a recommendation to extend our existing agreement with Constellation Energy for the purchase of third-party natural gas. This will actually be year 6 of our agreement with them. And you'll notice in the note that Mr. Young prepared that during the 1920 fiscal year, we estimated that we captured savings of over $97,000 by being able to access the third-party natural gas market. The ability to do that is based on the volume that we use in our various facilities, and we actually only have a handful of buildings that are not eligible for third-party natural gas. So because they've lowered that threshold over the years, we're really able to access the program and capture the savings.
Any comments?
Move for approval.
Second?
All right. Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
Ms. Romerman?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any new business, Dr. Hartzler?
No new business. We have enough business going on.
All right. And now, speaker number 15. We are to opportunity for comments from the audience and board members. And again, I will read the rules while you're making your way forward. Speakers should identify themselves. Each speaker is given a maximum of 3 minutes. Total time allocated to this item is 30 minutes. Under Board Policy 1800, the Board of Education President has the discretion to determine if topics are relevant enough to be heard and to establish the order of presentations. This includes the right to interrupt this section and move on to the next item. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Joy McConaughey. To Dr. Hartzler and President McAdams, to the rest of the board. First of all, I want you to know this is not my first time waiting 3 hours to talk 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's very important. And I just want to say thank you. First of all, I want to respectfully apologize for coming out of order with this topic as I speak differently than what the biggest topic was. I believe this maybe have been the first public board meeting, and so I appreciate Jamie Ward for being so patient with me. And my topic is regarding the Tulsa race riot. In February, State Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister came to Tulsa and indicated that the Tulsa race riot massacre should be taught in every school district in the state of Oklahoma. And so with that said, I wanted to come, and I've been asking and reaching out to see. My grandmother is Eldoris McConaughey, and I am one of the descendants of the race riot. And so I wanted to offer my expertise as a teacher with Union. I have been a substitute teacher for approximately 7 years. And so this is having an opportunity to teach at probably every school in the district. And so I wanted to offer my services to design and write and implement and then teach the curriculum from Union Public Schools. I know since February the whole country has changed. So I thought of and talked with one of the librarians at 6th and 7th grade center, which indicated there may be a possibility through the library fund to teach this curriculum with all this other stuff as a guest speaker through the library fund. It might be an option to implement the curriculum and still fall into the guidelines. And so I just wanted to say that I thought that teaching the curriculum in Union Public Schools would encourage a generation of children to be proud of their heritage. And I think that this subject is also part of the change that we seek tonight. And I agree that improving education to change with the complexities of time. I think that our children are ready and that they have been taught an anti-bullying policy with Union Public School for as long as I've been here. So I think that our children are ready to embrace a change. And I wanted to say that I too am part of a culture in which in the state of Oklahoma, our education has been overlooked and often undereducated. And even if when it is taught, it sounds bleak and it sounds detrimental. I'm sorry. So I just wanted to say that I thought this was an opportunity for us to teach this, and I think that our children are strong and our parents are ready, and I think that we need to be very careful that we don't teach racism, but to teach our curriculums in a way that's understanding and compassionate so that the young minds will change some of the mindsets of the older people and help us to all get along. Keep hope alive. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. At this time, I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Omerman?
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.